Good morning, everyone. As you know, there's very specific targeted things that I focus on in my wealth management practice. And I wanted to run through how I do an appointment. Because one of the challenges that I have is, people perceive me to be doing a whole lot of things. Yet in reality, I stay focused on things that are in my wheelhouse. And I make two arguments. I make the argument that Windsor's a small town, so there's no reason that a professional can't have multiple licenses and do a couple of different things really, really well. As long as they stay within their wheelhouse, what is of interest to them and what is of importance to them. So very specifically, I work in the seniors market. Yes, I work in other markets. I will help a first-time home buyer. I've got a first-time home buyer I'm trying to help right now. But the seniors market is where 80% of my business comes from. Just is what it is. So in the seniors market, they want to know what things are worth. They want to know how to disperse things. They want to know tax advantaged ways to be able to make sure that their assets survive them and transfer to the next generation. It's what I focus on in my wealth management practice. Yes, I know all of the other things, but my focus is on helping those senior citizens. Just like in my real estate practice, I focus on helping senior citizens. It's what I do. It's a blast. It's so much fun. I'm a senior citizen myself now. Anyway, so I wanted to run through just quickly a little bit about how I do a meeting. So my senior citizen client has sold their house. They've created open money that they really want to transfer to their charity when they're gone, when they no longer need the money, or to their beneficiaries when they no longer need the money. They want it to outlive them. Very simple. So I start off with the center page, and I do it this way. I start off with, for today, here are a few things that we need to get through, because this is the first meeting about my solution versus the bank solution. So for today, Brian Y, listening, solutions, and time. And then some other notes for me. What I need to know for my file, because I am starting to build my file. Okay? Very simple. Then I turn this over and I change my system. I've got 5 sheets of paper now. So Brian, macro, that I care about the total picture for the client. That the managers do the micro things. What I share with you on trading, that's all micro. Huh? I care more about how the macro is set up. Tax advantages, listening, solutions. It's what I do as a financial advisor. Very, very simple so far, correct? So I also, talking about Brian then, I only focus on seniors, 80% of my business. I look at companies and compare them, Manulife versus Equitable in this particular case. I look at withdrawals, tax advantaged opportunities, and resets, which are very important. I manage resets. It's what my job really is, technically, as a financial advisor at the end of the day. And then I go in and I talk about, I go over to this pile, I talk about resets, because I've just brought them up on what I manage and what resets do for somebody. Okay? Using my piles. If they have any questions, then I come over to a blank piece of paper and I explain it on a very powerful blank piece of paper. The most powerful part of this whole presentation is the blank piece of paper. So then I talk about the things that I do, how I only focus on very specific things. And I talk about the whole of Brian and the focus on Brian, what I focus on of this list. And this is number one, but they don't want to know that. They want to know how I'm focusing for them. Very simple. So then I go into the reason I'm there, what I'm talking about for today. So I've introduced myself, how I am different. Today, wealth deposit, we can put it with the bank or we can put it with the insurance company. If we put the wealth deposit with the bank, we've got probate fees, we've got time. After somebody passes away, it could take 2 years before the bank leaves, gives you the money. They can fight you tooth and nail. And they do. Nobody fully understands it, but the bank fights you tooth and nail. They want to keep the money. Process, lawyers, of course, costs money. So your total money at the bank goes down. Where I focus is the insurance company, so that it's private. Nobody knows your business. The bennies win, because money transfers on death very, very rapidly. There's no probate process. There's no 2 years of waiting for money. And it's tax advantage. The insurance company does what it needs to do with the funds before it doles them out. And the goal for me is to have either a bigger sum of money here, but that's less important than making sure the money is there. That's the most important part. So if somebody sells a house for, I don't care, use a number, $100,000. When they pass away, I want to make sure that they've had all the money that they needed while they were living. But that $100,000 is still there to move to the next generation. Now, if they needed extended care, then maybe the $100,000 is no longer there because the money is supposed to be there for them. Again, pretty simple, straightforward stuff. Then I go into the concepts of markets and the market risk that they have and what a 75 product means and what a 100% market means. And I use it very simple. I point out that let's say that they invested at the beginning of the year their $100,000 and they died on June 15th. The market was down 25%. What's their $100,000 worth if the $100,000 was invested in a market product or in a cohesive market product or a balanced market product? Their $100,000 is worth less at the time of death if it's at the bank. And the bank will only pay out what the market value is. But with an insurance product, instead of their $100,000 being down 25% on death, the insurance company steps in and gives the beneficiaries the $100,000. It's the difference. It's guaranteed with a segregated fund. Then I point out the other way is to think about they invested on June 15th with me. And the market's up going into the end of the year, 9.7% since June 15th. We've covered that in a different video. And here's where the market's at now. It's a nice little setup there. We got a kind of a cup and handle, so that's good. From a chartist's perspective, it's not a bad thing to have here. And we have kind of an upward sloping W, which is kind of a nice thing too. So we'll have to see whether the market breaks up and goes back to its 25%. We don't know. We'll have to see what happens. There's a lot of different headwinds going on right now. But I go back to the concept that if they invested with me on June 15th, and they're up 9.7% for the year with their deposit of $100,000, then it's time to trigger a reset to lock in this gain, which means that if they died December 15th out here somewhere, then this gain of their $100,000 from here to now is worth $109,750. That's locked in. It's the only thing that I do is trigger the resets, which is right in my wheelhouse. If there's anything that I'm really, really good at, it is the concept of it's time to trigger our resets. Let's go ahead and we can do that annually. It's what I do for my senior citizens to lock in those gains. It's one of the benefits of a segregated fund. Segregated funds are also private. No one knows what they decide to do. They can give one beneficiary 75% and the other beneficiary 25% if they want to. They can do anything. They can give their kids 80% of their portfolio, and they can give their charity, which in my case would be my cat Winston, who's right there. They can give their charity the other percentage. They can do anything they want to. Checks are instant, generally within a week and a half at most. Or around a week and a half. Let's put it that way. When was and then I ask a couple of other questions about wills, because there's some things about segregated funds with wills. Then I go into the concept of Manu versus Equitable, the difference between a 75-75 guarantee and a 75-100 guarantee. Equitable's guarantee for a senior citizen is so much better because it is a 75-100. That's exceptionally important. And I talk about that. So if they would have died on June 15th, in this last example that I just gave in this a little bit prior in the video, you can go back, Manulife would only guarantee 75% of their $100,000. Whereas Equitable will guarantee 100%. Exceptionally dynamic. If you're buying a segregated fund, you want to be buying a 75-100. For the most part. There's other reasons for a 100-100 product, but very few 100-100 products left on the market. Then I talk about the setup. So if my client does not have a TFSA as of yet, and they have, let's say, a $500,000 house that they sold, the very first thing that we do is we top up the TFSA. And we move that to a segregated fund because it's open money. We move that to a segregated fund where we name beneficiaries because this is the open money. And then the rest of the $500,000 goes into an investment vehicle separate to the TFSA because we've then got two accounts that are open money. Then as they age, what we want to do is we want to take the money, the monthly checks, we want to be coming out of the TFSA because it's more tax advantaged. And technically, if we needed to over time, if the TFSA ended up going bankrupt, going down to zero because they needed to draw a lot of money out because they've got care concerns and all kinds of different things, that's fine because they're still alive. It's their money. It's what their money is supposed to do. It's supposed to take care of them before it transfers to the next generation. Chances of drawing out your TFSA are pretty slim. But if it happens, it happens. Because there's still money to transfer to the next generation, tax advantaged. And we're looking at this as tax advantaged also. Yes, there'll be taxes on this open fund because you're going to have dividends and income and growth. And there'll be tax things about this, but it's mitigated because it's in the TFSA, which is good. So if they have more income than what they can possibly need while they're younger, then all of the extra per month, so if they get to the end of the month and they've given their grandkids an extra $50 because they came by and took them out to lunch or whatever, and they've done all kinds of fun things, then whatever's left at the end of the month can go into the open fund to continue to keep building it and give the next generation even more money. But that's only if there's extra money, which most senior citizens, by the way, have in this city because their pensions are pretty good. So that's how I structure the conversation. And then we move on to the concept at age 95, if they live that long. Because that's what the senior citizen is also concerned about. I don't want to run out of money, Brian. I don't want to be poor. We all technically die poor. We all go to heaven poor. can't take the money with us. So I talk about their LIF, find out how they're living now, and that their LIF goes to 0 at the age of 90, because that's how LIFs are done. The government's talking about this because more people are living to 95 or 96 or 97. But what I'm trying to also do is to make sure that this money fills this gap from 90 to 95. Because I don't know how long they're going to live. I don't know when God's going to call that. And my job, my responsibility to them is here. It's between 90 and 95 or 90 and 96 or whenever it is. Or if they die before that, it's also about the concept of dying before that. My responsibility, my job, my planning, what I'm trying to do. So then I talk about how their TFSA, if it goes to nothingness, that's fine, because this is their money that they're supposed to be living on anyway. All of it is their money technically. And then we start drawing out of this fund if we need it, if they live beyond their life income fund. And then I just go into the concept that it's easy, it's logical, and it's protected. Then I go, so along the way, if they had any questions, we've got blank pieces of paper that I explain it all. Then I go into the concept that that's what I do. Those things over there are what I do. And that the manager does the portfolio stuff. None of that matters to the senior citizen client. So none of the videos that you're watching matter to a senior citizen client. That actually gets thrown out the door. Okay? Doesn't matter what the fund manager is doing in the big building in Toronto. As long as it's a good fund manager with a solid track record of doing this stuff for a long period of time, which is the only thing that an insurance company is going to hire. We're not going to hire beginners and newbies. That doesn't matter. And then the last thing I do is I say the other responsibility that I have is to make sure that we get some growth per year out of the funds that we set up, the 2 funds or 3 funds, however we need to set the structure up. And so then I say that I point out, I dive into the product then to try to figure out which fund based upon their risk profile, which is right here, we should choose. And I direct them to a great manager. And then I explain to them how with my degree, here's what we could do. We could go with example A, example B, example C, and example D at the insurance company. And that I've looked at them and I've excluded B because its return is just too little over time because I can only look backwards. And so I build in, $15,600 of income per year. What would our backdated fund be? And where would we be if we died today from a valuation perspective? To show them how the guarantees and the payouts and all that stuff work out. And then I show them, here's what A was. Here's the fund that A was. Here's the fund what C was. Here's the fund what B was. Go into all of that. Have it all ready in case they ask any minute details, which they typically don't, because they're caring more about the overview. That's macro. This is micro. But I still have to choose some micro for them and explain why we're going into these funds, or this fund, or this group of funds that I otherwise recommend, depending upon how big the basket of money actually is. And then I talk about the guarantees. Again, I go back in and I point out, here's what I do. I manage the resets. Here's how good I am at it. And here's what resets do. They lock in those gains along the way. And then I go and say, now, as we're getting ready to do this, I have to have in my file several different things. And for today, the biggest thing that I needed to do today was to have you fill out the investor profile questionnaire, because that will tell me what my risk profile is, because I cannot violate what your risk profile is. And every year, or when you call me and say, Brian, I'm a little bit worried, my account is down, what you're saying is, Brian, my risk profile might have changed. And that's what financial advisors miss. That's where they get sued at. So when you call your financial advisor and say, John, I'm worried about where my account's at, what they should be saying to you is, holy crap, I got to come back out or I got to send you electronically a risk profile questionnaire. Fill that out for me, please. Because your risk profile can change over time. And that's what you're saying. When you call into your financial advisor and say, I'm really, really scared about my account, your financial advisor says, well, hey, yeah, it is okay. Markets go up, markets go down. Some of the best times to invest in the market are when they're down. I mean, look at what happened on, Wednesday of this week. The market soared, and you would have missed that if you were out of the market. That's typically true. Some of the best days in the market are when the markets are beat up. When there's blood in the streets is some of the best times to be an investor. It's all true. But what the advisor misses is that your risk profile might have changed. They still perceive that your risk profile is high growth. But once you start to see the results of high growth and the risk of high growth, maybe you're in middle growth. Maybe your risk profile has changed. And so where they get sued is if they don't have you fill out a new risk profile. This is so utterly important because we cannot guide your money in any way and guide you in any way without knowing what your risk profile is. Because we cannot be outside of your risk profile. If you are a conservative investor, I cannot have you in high growth. And if you demand to go into high growth after filling out a risk profile, then I got to have all kinds of documentation in my file saying, here's what they chose. Or I also have the option of saying, I don't want your risk profile then in my block of business because your risk profile is conservative and you're asking me for high growth, and my manager has to agree to that, has to approve that. Let's go back and have you fill out a new risk profile because maybe I missed something. And I can't guide you when you fill out a risk profile. You just answer the questions. They're very, very simple. It's a very simple process. If you have an investment someplace and you've never done a risk profile, call me now, because that financial advisor has been doing the wrong thing for you. We have to know what your risk profile is. That's the most important part. And so that's really for today at 11 o'clock. So I'm going to be leaving here soon to go to. That's how I handle a meeting with the senior citizen or with anybody. It's how I lay out a meeting. Very logical, very simple, a touch of homework done, not a whole lot of homework done because it's pretty much all the same stuff. Blank pieces of paper to explain, to show, hey, this is what my degree is in, and let me explain that in common sense terms. And I move through an appointment based upon this. Simple to understand, logical, and then of course I give the client these things because I need this for my file, and if there was any questions, I also put that in. So, and when a client asks a question, I write down what the question was and then draw out the solution to that question as well too. That way they have all of that. Sometimes I'll take all of it home and scan it so I know from my file exactly how that meeting went to, depending upon how I feel about the client. So that gives you an idea of how this meeting today is going to run with my 79-year-old senior citizen. It is important, if you have a senior citizen, it is important that we have some of these discussions about setups of segregated funds and make some real estate decisions before they get to be too old. And 79 is really one of those trigger points. 80 years old makes it a little bit harder. There's a little bit different requirements after somebody's 80 years old. So technically, yes, the senior citizen wants to stay in their house as long as they possibly can. I get that. My client today is perfectly healthy. He just recognized that, hey, it's just time to move to a nice swanky retirement village. And he's doing very, very well. and have the assets to be able to live where he lives. But that's how I structure all of this stuff as well too. So thanks for watching. If I can help your senior citizen in any way, I'd love to help them. Just give me a call, 519-995-6145. If you're a senior citizen watching this and you would like to have some conversations about stuff, it's what I do every day. That's what my calling is. That's why God keeps me here. You can call me anytime, 519-995-6145. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.